Now, I'm going to just warm our guests up with a very, very easy question, and a question that also maybe will just bring us a little bit of sunshine, or I could be wrong, but let's see if we can bring a little bit of glamour to proceedings today by just asking our panelists, where were they when they first thought, whether they were working as a travel writer or an editor or a blogger, where were you when you thought, yes, this is it, I am living the dream? I've just talked about this glamorous dream that many of us aspire to, but panelists, where were you when you thought to yourselves, yep, this is it, I'm living the dream? Who wants to be first?
We've all gone shy.
Go on then.
No, Ian, I can tell you.
Go on, Kevin.
It wasn't when I was writing, it was before then. It was more like realizing I wanted to travel. It was my first flight. First flight I ever went on was to Cairo, and I bought a one-way ticket. I arrived in Cairo airport, and I came out of the airport, and as you know, I'm sure a lot of you know, when you come out of Cairo airport, it's completely intimidating. And I'd never been anywhere, and I didn't know what to do. And I noticed some workmen lying under bed sheets. It was late at night, under bed sheets on the pavement. So I got my sheet out of my rucksack and lay down on the pavement with these workmen and pulled it over my head, just not to be there, you know, and lay there all night. And at dawn, when I woke up on the pavement in the middle of Cairo, all the workmen had gone. And I was on my own, peeping out from this sheet, looking out at Cairo. And I just thought, wow, I just saw this enormous shot of adrenaline and feeling like, yeah, I've arrived in Africa and I'm going to go for it. And got up and started, you know. And that was, I think for me, that was the start of everything.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kevin. Who else was ready to give me their answer? Was it Lyn?
Yeah, well, mine, I was such a keen traveller before we started Wanderlust. So I think my kind of moment once I was in the travel magazine world and we'd started Wanderlust, wasn't, I guess, only one moment, but it wasn't so much travelling, but it was meeting my travel heroes and my heroes of conservation and the authors I'd been reading. You know, there were so many fantastic travel books, for instance, during the 1980s and the early 90s. So in the first year of Wanderlust, I found myself meeting just about every travel writer I'd ever read, such as Dervla Murphy, Wilfred Thesiger, Redmond O'Hanlon, who insisted I stayed the night with them, having got me completely smashed. I went to David Attenborough's house, and you know, and he was showing me his collection of artifacts, and I thought, this is crazy, you know, like, Mum, you know, look where I am. I'm in David Attenborough's living room, you know. And so I'm not into celebrities, I've got to say. I hope I don't sound shallow, but it was just meeting my heroes of travel, my heroes of conservation, and even people like Simon Calder, who at the time was writing for The Independent, and I used to read him. I knew who he was, and I knew he was this crazy man who hitchhiked everywhere. And so even meeting Simon made a big impression. Oh gosh, Simon Calder, I just spoke to him. So that for me was such a joy. Yeah, brilliant.
Some people like Simon and David Attenborough, they just transcend celebrity, don't they?
Well, look, I mean, if I may chip in, since Lyn was kind enough to reference, I'm still writing for The Independent. And when I say I'm still writing for The Independent, I am literally still writing for The Independent. I used to have the great joy of working with Nicky at The Independent. She's now moved on to much, much greater things. But my editor there has just said, you've got to write about Heathrow losing its role as the biggest, most important, London using its role as the most important aviation hub in the world. So I am writing for The Independent. Kevin, if I can just say, the Novotel at Cairo airport is only 40 quid a night. Give yourself a break the next time. And to answer your question, Ian,
it was the late 1970s. I don't think the Novotel existed then.
Oh, crikey, not even Wanderlust magazine existed then, or The Independent, or indeed our lovely audience. No, never been a moment that I've thought that, because that feels to me like hubris, I'm afraid. Every day I wake up and I think, crikey, so I've got to write a number of stories, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. On a good day, I'll actually travel somewhere like Newcastle, and at the end of that, I might get paid for it, which still strikes me as quite remarkable, really. But honestly, I mean, 2 weeks ago I was hitching through Greece, and I was as happy as you could ever want to be, even when, or especially when, somebody picked me up and said coronavirus, or I think he just said corona, and gestured to the back of his pickup truck. So there I was, hitching down beside the Aegean Sea, bouncing around in the back of this Toyota. It was wonderful.
Excellent. Amanda?
Oh, I know exactly mine. The George Cinq Paris honeymoon suite. But the context of this is, I was about 25, and it was my first ever press trip, and I had been a junior reporter. So I was paying my dues. I was doing ambulance chasing, death knocks, council meetings, court reporting for a few years. And up in Manchester, and I kind of wanted to change. It was quite a lot to be doing. And I wanted to go down to London. So I looked in the Guardian media section, and there was a features writer and stylist on a wedding magazine. So I got the job, amazingly. And I got to go on a press trip, but they didn't have a travel section. So I somehow managed to go on this trip to Paris for this amazing honeymoon suite, and it had 5 balconies, and the Eiffel Tower was literally there. It was like you could touch it. And I came back, and it was incredible. And so I said to the editor, which you do when you're really young, don't you? And I said, can we have a travel section? Can we start a travel section? And she went, okay. And that was it. So the travel section started, but for no extra pay, I have to say. So for a while I was doing 3 jobs, but who cares, because I got the contacts. So that trip for me was it was unbelievable. Absolutely. Obviously, I've been to more exciting, exotic places since, but that was the one.
That was the moment.
I could do this. I could get paid to do this. So yeah, that's mine.
Cash.
So last but not least, my moment when I realized that I wanted to be a travel blogger, I was dividing my time. I was based in Edinburgh at that time. I was helping advising social enterprise startups, 50% of my time, and then 20% I was teaching, and 10% I was running my blog as a hobby. And in 2012, bloggers were not getting paid a cent. It was just my hobby. It was my passion. And my blog was all about how to travel and style on a budget. And I have a particular passion for hostels. And at that time, I was newly divorced. And every date I met, they all would groan at me the moment I told them that I write about hostels. When I said travel, they said, oh, wow, that's the dream job. And then I said hostels, and they were like, this date is ending right now. So I had this mission then to try and rethink the way people see hostels. And I came up with this idea of a guide, which I call luxury hostels, which are like hostels, but with private rooms and a bar, a cinema. And the first one I went to and researched was in Porto, a place called the Gallery Hostel. And the first evening I arrived there, I felt kind of nervous, like introducing myself as a blogger at the table. And then I sat down to a 3-course meal for €8 with a bottle of port wine, got absolutely hammered, and fell in love with this place. And then I realized that nobody knew about this hostel. And then I realized that was my calling in life, possibly to get hammered in hostels and to tell people that these amazing hostels exist. And the book was born a few years later. And yeah, that's how it started.
Thank you for sharing that, Kash. And Nicky?
For me, it's always the kind of natural things that just make me feel incredibly lucky to do this job. So, you know, standing on top of mountains, paddling down the Mississippi, you know, meeting mountain gorillas from a slight distance, that kind of thing. I just kind of think, I can't believe I get to do this job, and you just feel so lucky. But, you know, most of the time, that's not what the job involves. But, you know, there are those lovely perks that make everything worth it. So, yeah, that's it for me.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, panelists. And I guess, you know, the last few months have probably made us even more grateful for the kind of perks that we've just been talking about. And I kind of want to move on really to not thinking about the last few months, although we could probably spend, you know, a whole hour just talking about what the pandemic has been like in terms of travel journalism. But I'm kind of keen to look beyond that to post-pandemic, because of course it's going to have an impact. What we've just been through will have an impact on, of course, on travel, but also the writing and the broadcasting and the blogging that we do about that. What I want to ask you, because some of you I've seen cycles before, I'm sure. You've seen downturns and of course 9/11 and all kinds of other shocks to the travel world, as it were, in the industry. So I want to ask you, what makes this particular situation we're in now, what do you think are the similarities in terms of what we're likely to face when we come out of it? And what are going to be the differences in terms of what, as travel journalists, you might be facing? I mean, is it likely, for instance, that we can simply go back to what we were doing 12 months ago? Who wants to kick that one off? If you want to just kind of tentatively raise a hand. Simon.
Well, I'm only answering this first because I've seen more disasters than everybody else put together. No, it's all going to be very, very different. Of course, nothing has been like this. We started this year. I tweeted on the 1st of January 2020 like an idiot. Hey everybody, your horizons have never been wider. There's never been such great value. Traveling has never been safer. Go and make the most of it. So that went well then. And of course, everything has gone, as they say in the travel industry, tango uniform. And when finally we recover, and you're getting various predictions from various people, but let's say maybe 2025 we might regroup, and we'd be talking about the kind of scarring that travel has received, and maybe by 2030 we'll be back to where we were in 2019. But everybody's going to have much narrower horizons. There's an awful lot of fear out there, not just of catching coronavirus off other people, but also being caught the wrong side of somebody else's lockdown. And I think those are the sorts of fears that are going to keep our horizons short, because of course expanding them depends on lots of air links, and those aren't going to be started up anytime soon. And a lot of people, of course, especially Lyn's best friend, David Attenborough, are going to be delighted that there's not going to be so much flying around. But there's also this whole group of people who are not going to be at the races in terms of travel. They will be older people. They will be people who have pre-existing medical conditions who perhaps didn't quite realise that a vote for Brexit was a vote for the end of the EHIC card and travel insurance that costs more than the actual trip. So unfortunately, the number of people who are travelling is going to reduce. So too will the audience for travel journalism. Sorry to be such an old misery, but I've got plenty of other things I'm miserable about if you'd like to hear them.
Does anyone share Simon's pessimism or maybe want to bring any optimism? Nikki?
I share Simon's pessimism to a certain extent, but I do also think that there are kind of new opportunities in a way. I mean, not that I'm saying there was anything good really to come out of the pandemic, but it did force a lot more people to spend their holidays in the UK this year rather than going abroad. And that's meant a lot of people have kind of discovered parts of the country they might not have done otherwise. There might be natural wonders or historic attractions. And I think people are more open to traveling closer to home now. So there are more opportunities in that sense.
Yes. Lyn?
And another sort of trend is, I hate that word because, we always have to call everything something Asian, but workation has become the new phrase. And I think there really is something in it. I think that one of the biggest changes that will have happened this year is the fact that we've realised we don't need to work in an office. And, so many companies, my own included, are thinking, well, we're probably never going to go back into an office. We're going to be moving into just a sort of space where we've got some meeting rooms. We won't be expected to go in anymore and sit at a desk and work from it. And I know so many companies that are doing the same, nothing to do with travel. And so there's going to be this huge mind shift. There is already this huge mind shift that you don't need to go into an office, you can work from home. And then, of course, the next logical step from that is, well, if you can work from home, you can just as easily work somewhere else. So the number of like Zoom calls I've been on in the last sort of 3 months, where you hear a noise and you think, that sounds like a rather exotic bird in the background, or oh, you know, that sounds more like the Mediterranean than here. And sure enough, you know, it's been people, I'm having business meetings with people, and they have taken off to somewhere for, you know, 1, 2, 3 months. And that way as well, for the people who can do it, it gets round, you know, what Simon was saying, because there is this fear of being caught somewhere when there's a lockdown. Well, I know several people, I've been having several meetings with people where they are in that situation, but they don't really mind, because if you're going to be locked down, you know, in Greece, you might as well be locked down in Greece as opposed to, you know, Newcastle, London, wherever. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that shapes up. But certainly a lot of the tourist boards are looking at this now, of course, as a marketing opportunity. There's a whole load of new visas launching over the next few months, and lots of various schemes happening. And I think this will be one trend that will be here to stay.
Amanda, thank you, Lyn. Amanda, you had something to say there?
Yeah, just that I guess travel journalism can't return as it was immediately, but I think we'll just have to adapt. So if you think about it, we all adapted for this year. You know, we had to ditch travel pages for months, and then suddenly we've been doing a lot of UK breaks and looking at other things that we wouldn't normally be doing, which has actually been really good. I think it's moved the pages on. And pre-pandemic, we were looking at ways to tackle the climate crisis, but in a cosmo way, so it wouldn't be sort of shoving it down your throat and saying where you can't go. And it was more about slipping things in, so slow travel and making the journey, the holiday we did last year. This is all pre-pandemic, so I think this will shift that forward. So we'll be looking at that next year as well. But adapting, we'll just have to adapt. I wrote a future of travel feature, and from the surveys I was looking at, a lot of younger people, 20s, 30s, they can't wait to get away. It's not everyone, because there's the psychological difference that Simon was talking about, but a lot of young people, the surveys are indicating they really want to get away next year. And workation as well, definitely. People going away for longer, but maybe less, going away less, but for longer, definitely. So it's not, I don't think it is all doom and gloom.
Go on, Kevin.
Yeah, I think also picking up on that, there's a lot of experiences that people, especially young people, have been going abroad to find, which they're realizing they could find closer to home. You know, like swimming with dolphins, or, you know, that kind of thing, surfing experiences, and those are sort of adventurous experiences. I think there's a lot of realization that you can actually get those things inside Britain, or much closer than going to New Zealand or something. And I think that will be a trend that we'll see more kind of adventurous escapades close to home.
Yes. Kash, did you want to add anything on that?
I was going to say that from the industry I work in the kind of budget travel youth industry, the hostel sector has been decimated and has really suffered badly from the crisis. And every week goes by when I hear another hostel that's closing down. And what I worry about is that once we come out of this crisis, we won't have many iconic hostels are closing down. So many young people will not have the access to the same backpacking experiences that many of us had. And that for me is a great loss, and that will take time to rebuild. So as a blogger, influencer, whatever you want to call me, I think the most important thing that I want to do, and I hope my other colleagues want to do, is use our influence wisely to tell stories about the businesses that really need our support, instead of going back to powder puff pieces about destinations and places that don't need our attention. So that's what my hope is, that we, as people become more conscious about the impact of this travel spend, that we start focusing on businesses that really give a damn about us and about tourism. So, yeah.
But I mean, I suppose there's an economic reality to all of this, isn't it? That most of you, I guess, are funded by advertisers, or advertisers pay for the pages for the whether that's online or in print. I mean, are they still going to be there in 12 months' time? I mean, are we likely to see the amount of space devoted to travel journalism diminished? Simon?
Yeah, I'm the worst person to talk about this, but all I can say is that there is most definitely going to be an arms race amongst destinations, because clearly almost everyone has been obliterated this year. And so next year, particularly if, let's hope we get a vaccine, let's hope there's sufficient testing, let's hope many of the restrictions, primarily in the UK, but also around the world, are removed and we're allowed to travel again, then every country in the world is going to be throwing money at fantastic magazines like National Geographic and Wanderlust and so on, and many other great travel sections, and maybe even the odd online website. So yeah, I think that will come back at least for a year. And just to go back on the point of hostels, look, of course, anybody who loses their job when these circumstances have conspired so cruelly, it's just awful. But I think actually the hostel market is going to be in far better shape. If you've got a 20-floor 400-room hotel, then you're in trouble, pal. If you've got a little hostel which you can actually hibernate and then revive, I think that's going to be much better. So I'm not too pessimistic about hostels. If I owned a cruise ship, I'd be very cheesed off, but I don't.
Fair enough.
Well, some of you have already touched on what we, I guess, call sustainable travel, and how our thinking has changed over the last few months about what's sustainable and what's responsible. What role do we as journalists and bloggers have to play in all that? I mean, so Simon's talked about we're going to hopefully get lots of advertisers throwing money at us. But what responsibility do we see that we have in terms of saying, oh, okay, fine, but we can't just go back to what we were doing before. We've had this opportunity to see maybe a different type of travel writing and journalism. What do you see as your responsibility when it comes to our response to the climate crisis, I guess, is what I'm asking. Kevin.
Yeah, I think Kash's point about steering people towards spending their money in the right places is a really good one. You know, there's been like a model of development sold to poorer communities around the world that if they protect their environment and give up hunting and fishing and things like that and don't sell out to the gold miners and the hydrocarbon exploration, they will make their money out of tourism. And that has just gone, pear-shaped this year, and I worry about those communities and whether they're losing faith in the whole idea of it. And I think there is, when we do come back, I think there is a responsibility with travel writing to try and help those communities who invested so much time and effort in protecting their environment and encouraging people to see it.
And Kevin, I mean, is that a conversation that you, for instance, can have? I'm sure you can have that conversation at The Guardian, but could you have that conversation with other travel editors or editors of travel websites? I mean, how easy is it as someone pitching ideas to have that kind of conversation?
Well, I think I can't speak for other writers, but you find your ideas in all sorts of places, and I think it's quite hard to know before you go what you're going to find, but I think when you're on the ground you can judge people and find places that will carry that message, and communicate your enthusiasm perhaps through your writing for those places. Sure.
I don't know if our editors want to jump in. Those of you who are commissioning pieces, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, at Wanderlust, I mean, I guess at The Guardian, we're probably the magazine that is most about sustainable travel and conscious travel, as we call it, and always have been. It's been in our contributor guidelines since issue 1. So again, so it is the sort of thing we cover anyway. And we do feel that responsibility. We were the first media brand to join a movement called Tourism Declares Climate Emergency. So it is something that we're very passionate about. But I think that what has become apparent doing reader surveys, as we have done every few weeks since the pandemic started, there's a real feeling though that certainly our readers or our audience are much more aware of it now as well. They've been much more aware of the pandemic's impact on the world and on communities and on conservation, and they are worried about it. And this is, it's not us asking them, this is them putting this into free text fields and saying that they've got a real feeling that they're not going to take travel for granted again. But also that when they do travel, certainly initially, they want to be traveling to the right places and helping the right people. And which is wonderful. Now, there are still, I'm not going to say everybody's going to travel that way. These are Wanderlust readers I'm talking about. And I think there are going to be people who just want to escape. They just want to get out anywhere. They want to lie in the sun. They want to relax. They want to forget everything. But I think there will also be, I think this is where maybe this pandemic has been a bit different to previous crises, is that given the communication, given the fact that it was completely global, given the fact that the communication streams that we have these days, we've been able to see inside people's houses, in Italy, in Spain, in Greece, in Asia. And I think it's really hit people to see how, all these people in other countries suffering as well. And so I think there will be a bit more of a move that way. And like I say, not every holiday maker will be doing it, but I think there will be a heightened awareness of the fact that people will have suffered and that we do therefore need to travel responsibly. And also, as regards to the climate crisis, I think that there's just going to be much more awareness of it now anyway. It got knocked off the agenda a bit because of the pandemic, but already you can see it's starting to be talked about a lot more. Obviously, huge difference now in the States as well. And so I think it will be the big topic next year.
Amanda, I think you were going to say something earlier, were you?
Well, no, I would just chip in there. I think from conversations that I've had with colleagues, it's been really interesting with fellow travel writers, and people are talking about flying less, and this will reflect in the pages next year, as Lyn's saying. It will be of course it will be a huge topic, but as I said previously, I think we were naturally going that way anyway, and readers are leading that. We can see from SEO on the website what people are searching for. There is interest in it. And I think it's great. It will change things. And if travel writers are on board, just for example, I was just thinking about a place that I also look after Women's Health magazine, and health and fitness seems to go really well with this anyway. So invariably, where you're putting in somewhere like Soul and Surf, someone went to Soul and Surf, you're staying at a tent, you're surfing every day, you're eating really healthy vegan food. That's fantastic, but it's inspiring, it's fun still for younger readers. But to me, that's sustainable travel. How you get there, that's going to be the interesting thing as well. Maybe we can all start looking less at flights, train travel, ferries. It's all there, and it feels quite, after this year, it feels quite exciting to go anywhere, to be honest.
Well, panelists, I mean, we've already said we've had time to step back and reflect. Have you been doing any reflection on and thinking about travel journalism per se, and how travel journalism and so we've talked a lot about how destinations might change and how we get to destinations and so on. But in terms of the actual nuts and bolts of what we say in our pieces, or what messages we get across, or how we do that, I mean, have we seen anything change over the last few months, or has there been an opportunity for innovation or just change in the way that we do our travel journalism, and maybe therefore how we think of travel journalism as a subject matter? Have we seen anything change, Nicky?
I mean, it's sort of operationally, we've definitely seen a change in how we're sort of commissioning pieces and how writers are going about writing them. So for us, we've come to rely a lot more on journalists based in destination or who have a specialism in a particular area. So, you know, where it's not possible to travel there, we can just commission them to write about what they know. And so actually, I think that's quite a wise kind of approach, I suppose. And actually, for any travel writer, it's probably quite good to find a niche right now. Just, you know, because we don't know what's going to happen with travel in the next year. So if you can make yourself an expert in something, then it opens up opportunities.
Simon.
Yeah, look, I've done almost nothing since the 18th of March, apart from write about the various effects of the crisis on people's refunds, on people losing their jobs in the travel industry, and on what are the chances that I'll be able to go to country X in 3 weeks' time without having to quarantine when I come back. And a really interesting thing that's happened, particularly in the area of community journalism, is that there's a couple of guys who have kind of put their hands up and said the government can't be, I think the technical term is, bothered to tell us what the infection rates are doing and how it's looking, and you know, they're not giving us the data that they say they're making decisions on. So therefore, I'm going to sit there with the spreadsheet from the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control, and I'm going to work it out, and I'm going to publish it through Twitter every day. And that, you know, no income stream that I can see. I will leave that to wiser heads. But it's really interesting that there is clearly a demand for travel journalism in its broadest sense out there, and there's kind of people just coming in and meeting that.
I mean, Kash, you operate in you know, in the online sphere. I mean, are you seeing more traditional outlets taking on some of the tasks that bloggers and websites have been doing?
I think the one thing that every journalist or writer or blogger found in the pandemic, once the lockdown was lifted, was everybody realized that it's very important to your personal brand and who you are as a personality has to shine more than ever in the online space. Because if you don't stand out, then people will not follow you. And there's various ways of doing that. And as for my work's perspective, obviously I have my blog where I tell stories, but video, as everybody is curious to see what this new normal, I hate this term, what it looks like. So I'm lucky to be based in Berlin. So I have none of the headaches and worries that Simon's been talking about. So I can hop on a train, and in 4 hours I was in Prague in June, when Prague was completely empty and the old town was empty of tourists. It was this surrealist feeling, but we captured all that on video. And that is something that people want to see, is are people wearing masks? What is the hand sanitization like? So we did a big campaign with the German Tourism Board and went Munich and Berlin, and showed people that you can still have a safe but fun experience. And this is where travel journalists need to diversify and get better at maybe doing podcasts. I've seen a number of people diversifying into podcasts, videos. There's so many tools to tell stories nowadays. So there's no excuse to not do it.
Yes. Kevin?
Yeah, just following on from what Kash said, I think for me, working in traditional print, I've seen it become much more travel become much more newsy, and the reaction speed that required to changes, you know, is quicker. So you have to be more on the ball, really. So I think Kash is exactly right, but I think, you know, the whole sector is going to have to respond to that and be a little bit more nimble.
Yes, yes. I mean, I'm just, sorry, go on, Lyn, and then I'm going to come to a question that we've got on the chat there. But Lyn, yes, what did you want to add, Lyn?
I was going to say, in our case, as well as giving people daily coronavirus updates or whatever, and we've had record web traffic since the pandemic started, and those sort of stories and those updates have obviously clearly been very important. But we've also had people wanting basically their travel dreams kept alive. And they've also wanted entertainment and so on. So we've been doing weekly travel quizzes, and so much so we've got a travel quiz book rushing out in the next week or two. It's at the printers as I speak. We've been doing events, virtual events, nearly every week. In fact, we did 2 last week. Yeah, we've already done 1 this week. We get hundreds of people on each one. And so, yeah, things have changed so much on a practical level. And also we've had to, you know, as Kash was saying, we've had to diversify. We're having to do things in different ways. And so lots of virtual events. We've actually got 4 books at the printers at the moment, have all come out of things we've been doing over the summer. So it's been a very exciting time in many ways, and we have had to be nimble. But it hasn't all been about, I think the point I want to make as well, hasn't all been, you know, the writing and the journalism isn't all about the coronavirus situation. People still want to think about travel. They still want to dream about travel. And they want to really feel that they can get back out there and do it. And that's what we're trying to really kind of help them with at the moment.
Yes, Amanda, yes.
Yeah, just really quickly, that's so similar at Cosmo. They've had these record stats online, they just soared. And then I was asked to do more work online. So as Simon was saying, so you could be reactionary. So it's where now is one of the quarantine lists. At the beginning, it's gone a bit out of control now, hasn't it? But at the beginning, it's really interesting. Do you feel safe to fly? And then we interviewed some people who'd literally just gone on a flight and how it felt. And that's been really, really good. But mixed up with the stories that Lyn's talking about, the indication of what people were searching for was still quite dreamy, actually. Yes. You know, the people were still obviously searching for a bit of escapism in their armchair. So it was the fun, which was, yeah, and definitely more video. We've talked about that. Yeah. We know that we need that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you. Chris has asked a great question. How does the panel feel about influencers and them cashing in on the beat? Are you finding that travel PRs are becoming less forthcoming with press trips? Because they're now aiming their efforts at untrained Instagram influencers. Ooh. Nikki.
I think that's a slightly sort of narrow view about what influencers do. I think it's very different what influencers and bloggers do from what we do, and I think they both kind of serve a purpose in the travel PR world. From speaking to PRs myself, I know that they value both actually, and you know, a lot of PRs have told me how keen they are still to get, you know, print coverage or, you know, coverage in an online magazine, as well as, you know, those photos on Instagram or whatever. So I think they are quite different, and it also depends on the client, I suppose. It depends on the destination, depends on the attraction. So I think they kind of serve different purposes, but also sometimes I think consumers want a brand they can trust. So, you know, they might have seen these influencers, but also, you know, if you have a big name behind you, then they might think that they can trust you a bit more, and they trust your judgment. So actually, I think there's space for sort of everyone in this sphere.
Lyn, do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. But so we actually work with influencers, and where we do campaigns, you know, with the tourist board, for instance, if they want to use influencers, then absolutely. So part of my commissioning and talent wrangling or whatever isn't just straightforward journalist for editorial in the magazine or website. It's actually with influencers for campaigns. And I just signed up yesterday for a campaign in January. And so it's an interesting world. But I still, what I do find frustrating, though, I must admit, is when a PR or representation company perhaps haven't done their homework enough on an influencer or whatever. I can see Kash nodding his head, because I think there are people out there who are really good, or they are very, they very much have specialised in an area. They really know their stuff. And then there's some of the other ones, unfortunately. And having judged a couple of times various awards for influencers, it's really telling sometimes when stuff has been sent in. And, you know, sometimes I can't help feeling, unfortunately, a PR and an agency is just ticking a box and it isn't the right person they've used. And I would hope that as time goes on, though, that will change and it'll become a lot more rigorous. So So, but yes, I think, you know, we coexist, and they've definitely got their place. And as I say, we do use them. I do commission them.
Kash, did you want to come in on that?
The girls covered perfectly. It's, as I said, there's a role for everybody in travel media, and it's important to remember that there are influencers who have incredible skills in terms of photography and telling stories through video or through Instagram stories. So each requires its own special skill set, and they all complement each other perfectly. So there is no reason to fear influencers, the good ones at least, and the ones that don't fake the numbers. But we won't get into that. That's for another day.
Yeah, we've just got a comment here from Stan. Stan says he's worked on both sides of the fence on this one. Clients still like to see hard print, and it's much harder to evaluate blogs and Instagram, which I think is something we've...
Wouldn't agree with that. But
you wouldn't agree with that, Kash?
No. There's so many ways you can track influence. It's incredible, the tools that are available, but that's for another masterclass for another day.
Okay, we'll maybe come back to you for that one, Kash. And Veronica says perhaps the situation will bring bloggers and or online influencers with journalists back together. On some previous press trips, I felt the rivalry a bit, but now when pretty much everyone's back to square one, the purpose to promote travel unites all storytellers more than ever. Would we agree with that? Yeah, we're getting thumbs up there. I mean, how do we? I mean, what does journalism bring? I mean, we talked about the importance of having brands and, you know, authority, you know, behind us. But I mean, what are we still looking to journalists to do in this field that perhaps influencers and others can't do? And maybe, I don't know if we want to include bloggers with journalists in that. Amanda?
This isn't about separating. This is just about a general. It's a tsunami of information, isn't it? So, and I know this from friends who contact me, that when they're looking for a holiday, that it's just when you actually go online to sort out holiday, it's just, there's so much information, and it doesn't mean an influencer is not great, but I think sometimes people do go back to a voice or brand that they trust. It just sometimes just because of time, literally that. But and then you can work on that and build up a trip, can't you? But I think if you go on and it's just this flood of information, or on Instagram as well, it can just be too much. So you might there might be a couple of Instagrammers that you just love and you follow. Also, going back to that, we feature them in Cosmo. Not all the time, but if there's great influencers, we put them in, and we have awards with them in as well. So it can definitely coexist.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you, folks. Let me just move on to another topic, which maybe we've given some thought to over the last few months for a variety of reasons. And that's that travel journalism, and of course, it's not just travel journalism, all kinds of journalism in the UK as well, but certainly in travel journalism, there's a serious lack of representation, isn't there? You know, in terms of role models for the Black or Asian or LGBTQ or plus size travelers within the travel media. Now, I'm sure we all would recognize that's an issue, that's a problem we need to address, but how do we address that? And have we seen any examples or initiatives, or, you know, yeah, how are we trying to address that gap? Ooh. Go on. Well, I'll come to Nicky first. Nicky first.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, Nicky.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I mean, I think we're all probably proactively trying to address that by seeking out writers of colour and, you know, just trying to, I mean, the sector is overwhelmingly white. I think everyone would acknowledge that. So I think all we can do really, well, not all we can do, the least we can do is sort of actively try to get in new writers, new voices, and get some diversity in there. And, you know, that might be writers of colour. It might also be, as you were saying, you know, plus size travellers, for example. I was interviewing someone the other day who's behind a movement called Unlikely Hikers, and they're all about kind of all sizes, all colours, all genders, that kind of thing. So it is possible to kind of feature these people and shine a spotlight on that diversity, and hopefully that will lead to greater diversity within travel journalism itself.
Thank you, Nicky. Sorry, Amanda, we cut you off there. You were jumping in.
It's pretty much the same. So I think it comes down to us, doesn't it? And so the recent influencer feature that we did, would just make sure it's diverse. We did. It's important, and that should build, shouldn't it? From that, it'll inspire people.
I guess social media influencers. I mean, that's a pool of talent that perhaps we weren't aware of before, and now actually, and diverse talent, I would imagine. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe you're going to tell me that the influencer, travel influencers are just as white as travel journalism, but I suspect not. So
no, there's definitely more diversity amongst influencers, and so like I say, where we are working with influencers, that's very much the case. Very much the case. But and yeah, I totally agree with what Nicky and Amanda are saying. We are, proactively also, looking. But at the same time, one point, I think with journalism is when somebody sends in a proposal, they send in an idea. I don't know what colour they are. I don't know what size they are. I don't know any of that. And so, yeah. We are doing what we can, and we are proactively trying to make sure that we diversify. But at the same time, if when we're trying new people as well, it's going to be somebody who's just sent in the right idea for us and for our readers.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to?
Yeah, I was just thinking about it from the writer's point of view, which is that there's this massive industry of PRs and tourist boards that you connect with when you get to places to write about, and they often contain prejudices and imbalances that I think the writer then can address. Who you work with, which communities you go to, and who is your guide, and that kind of thing. You have choices there, and you can make it. Although I would say that once I went on a press trip, on a trip to the United States with a Native American guide who presented himself as a Native American. I later discovered was born in West Yorkshire. There are dangers.
Maybe we just need more Yorkshire voices.
Responsibility that you can find those people, sure, at the other end of from the end role.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kevin. Kash, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say that it's just a matter of everybody taking responsibility and encouraging their peers and commissioning editors to be aware of the talent that exists. There's so many talented people that exist that they just need a leg up, and maybe it requires creating an online resource so that commissioning editors are aware that there's this greater pool of talent that exists not only in travel journalism but also within the blogging influencer sphere. There's so many talented voices out there, and the more diverse voices we have in travel, the better travel will be as an experience, and more people will travel, because growing up in Britain, just looking at white middle-aged men on TV talking about travel. There was no role models for me growing up, and there still isn't that many role models in that sense that somebody I can connect to. So yeah, I think it needs to improve a lot, and there needs to be something. It can't be just the commissioning editors. There needs to be a whole movement across the travel industry.
Great, thank you, Kash. Well, listen, just one final question from me, and then we've got a couple from our audience, and I would just encourage our audience, if you've got any questions, just to put those into the chat now. But just a final question. Many of our attendees are student journalists. If you could go back to your younger selves and offer your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be in terms of becoming a travel journalist or blogger? What have you learned that you kind of wish you'd known when you were starting out, and that might just give some of our audience a little bit of a jump start? Simon, you're on mute, Simon.
Sorry, everybody. I'm I would simply say that that the same advice as I sort of noted and took was, if you possibly can, get a job in travel. It almost doesn't matter what you are doing. I used to be a cleaner at Gatwick Airport. I used to frisk people. That was a job, not a hobby. And you gradually get to understand how the travel industry works. And that was very, very good. And the other thing is, well, tied in with that, don't give up the day job. Crikey, the financial challenges facing everybody in travel journalism, as with everybody in travel, are immense at the moment. So if you can get any kind of gig doing any kind of writing, then bank that. But making a living out of it, my goodness me, it was almost impossible in 1979 when I started working on this book, and it's still pretty much impossible, but it's very good fun, everybody.
Thank you, Simon. Anyone else got a top tip? Amanda?
Mine would be have a niche, definitely. I think that makes a big difference, and then you become the expert that people come to. And obviously travel and write. Don't everyone sits there saying they want to be one, but travel and write. But definitely need either a destination or a subject within travel. Seems to most people I know have done really well. Seem to have they're the expert in that area.
Yes, great. Well, thank you for that. Let me just go to some of our questions now on the chat. I'm going to go to Bethany. So Bethany's sort of taking us back to one of the earlier points. What duty do travel journalists have to support the UK economy by continuing to focus on domestic travel options once lockdown restrictions lift? I mean, do we have a duty to that, Simon?
No, not at all. And for goodness sake, look, let's just remember why we're all here. We love traveling. We love the fact that it connects the people of the world. And sure, it's absolutely terrific for me to be connected with the excellent people of Newcastle and every other part of the kingdom. But that makes it sound as though we have to favour the UK over the rest of the world, as you will have noticed Rishi Sunak did by cutting overseas aid. Look, travel is absolutely vital. Who said it? If you actually go meet people in peace, in friendship, it's quite difficult to have wars with them. Travel from the richer countries of the West to the poorer countries is an incredibly effective way of transferring wealth. So, yeah, by all means, make the most of the UK, but don't think, right, we have to promote good old Blighty because there's many more, as it were, deserving courses, but I may well be heckled out of existence by your other excellent panelists.
So we don't expect post-pandemic for the mix of our pages, whether that's the Independent or Wanderlust or National Geographic or a Traveller or Cosmo or The Guardian, or we don't expect the mix between domestic and international to shift.
I think in our case, yeah, we'll definitely be doing a bit more UK. We are doing more UK travel already, and it's most popular on our website at the moment is UK. And so, I can see us doing more of that going forward. But like Simon says, people do want to travel and they are dreaming of those long haul places. And that's what we're about too. And on top of that, not everybody in the UK wants to have tourists in their backyard, as Simon knows too well. I mean, look at the furore he caused recently. I saw him trending on Twitter, having upset part of the UK. But, we had somebody cancel a subscription last week because I'd written about her place where she lives, Arnside, in Cumbria. And she was a subscriber and most offended. She didn't want me to be sending people to where she lives, and she cancelled her subscription. So it's not as easy as that anyway.
Well, to be fair to Bethany, Bethany's just replied she was just channeling the Chancellor too. She agrees that it's not not your job to do that. So thank you for that, Bethany. Okay, let me see. Stan just comments, having moved back into writing as my main source of income, my observation would be that quality still counts. If pitching travel, it needs a really powerful theme, more significant than the supposed travel element. Okay, well, thank you for that, Stan. Venice Travel Media, so I'm not sure who's behind that, but question for the panel. With book reading and bookstores enjoying something of a renaissance, do you see traditional guidebooks finding a new audience in the future of travel?
Not traditional guidebooks, oddly. I mean, of course, Lonely Planet, Rough Guides, everybody else has to work out what the market is. And I imagine if I were having a meeting with them, just like Lyn has found, you would be refocusing very, very sharply on the UK and other short-haul destinations just because you think that's where the market is going. But the only completely brand new guidebook that has come out during the pandemic is an incredibly new financial model, which is crowdfunding. It's to the Indian Ocean island of Socotra, which is part of Yemen, and which interestingly nobody can get to at the moment, and haven't been able to since March. But Brat Guides, to their great credit, got I think £10,000 from various people to crowdfund this guidebook. What a wonderful model, right? There we, oh, and yes, Lyn is currently modelling the guidebook.
What a double act. Anyone else want to add anything on that about in terms of guidebooks? No, okay, cool. Lou Jane, hi Lou Jane. What makes a travel pitch stand out? What is it that you're looking for that's often missing from pitches that don't get commissioned? So editors, what's the threshold for you guys in terms of those that get published and those that just stay on the slush pile? Nicky.
Well, I mean, it's the simplest thing, and it's probably the thing that most writers hate hearing, but it is just knowing the publication, and that kind of really helps you tailor your pitch to that publication and know what they're after. Yeah, for us, we get a lot of pitches that are sort of probably more suited to the main National Geographic magazine rather than Traveller, because we're obviously a consumer travel magazine rather than the main mag, which is a bit more kind of investigative and isn't really about the practicalities of going somewhere. So from our point of view, it's just knowing exactly who you would be writing for and coming up with something that would work for them, I think. That's really the main thing. And then, yeah, if you're sort of a first time travel writer or we don't know you, then just give us a little bit of information about you, just so we know kind of who you are and what you do. So those are kind of the basics, but yeah, I've kind of a lot of us have sort of talked about this recently, so there are a lot of more in-depth tips to give, but yeah, that's kind of the basics.
Sure. Amanda, did you want to add anything there?
No, that's the same. So we don't really commission, actually. We mainly use staff or a little pool of writers, so it's not really applicable, actually.
Sure. Bronwyn says, I'm a wheelchair user. How do editors feel about commissioning disabled travellers? Nicky again.
I mean, yeah, we're open to commissioning all kinds of travellers, and we do occasionally run reports into accessible travel, and so we're always keen to hear from writers who have first-hand experience of that. So yeah, I mean, not that everything you write has to be about your disability, but that again is sort of a niche, so that's a good expert opinion that you can offer. So there's that side of things, but then just general travel as well, of course, it's open to everyone.
Brilliant, thank you. Let me just see what else is in here. Just to your point, Nicky, about why you accept pitches. Stan says when he published a magazine, Eastern Airways, which is a near 100% UK audience, he got a surprising number of pitches from people who assumed it was for readers in the Gulf region and hadn't even bothered to check. So yeah, know your commissioning editor, know the magazine, know the website before, and know who their audience is, I think, before you send in that pitch. Well, folks, thank you very much. I realize we're a little bit over time. Is there anything, panel, you wanted to add, or anything we've missed that you think like we cannot leave this discussion without mentioning this?
Well, yes, if you can, anybody who cares to follow my Twitter feed at Simon Calder, I have just tweeted the story I've been writing during this excellent discussion. And so the point of this is that you have to be able to handle all the online stuff, which I've generally been, talk about old dog new tricks. You can learn, and you certainly have to. And so very much just make sure that you can handle all the technology, because that makes you more and more valuable certainly to online news organizations.
Yes, well, thank you, Simon. And don't think we didn't hear the tippy tip tap of your keyboard as you were hitting that deadline. But well done. That's very impressive. Well, panel, listen, thank you so much for being willing to share your time, experience, and expertise with us today.